At 11:27, we know from video evidence, at 11:27, the exterior door suspected of where we knew the shooter entered, Ramos, was propped open by a teacher. 11:28, the suspect vehicle crashes into the ditch, as previously described. The teacher runs to the room 132 to retrieve a phone, and that same teacher walks back to the exit door, and door remains propped open. There were two males, as reported by Regional Director Escalon yesterday. There were two males at a funeral home that when they heard the crash, they went to the crash scene. When they arrived at the crash scene, before they got there, they saw a man with a gun exit the passenger side with a backpack, and they immediately began running. Ramos began shooting at him. Did not hit him. One of the males fell when he was running. Both males returned to the funeral home while they're running. And then again, we see through video, teacher reemerges inside the school in panic and apparently calls 911. 911 call at 11:30. There was a crash, man with a gun. 11:31, the suspect reaches last row of vehicles in the school parking lot. 11:31, the suspect shooting began at the school while patrol vehicles got to the funeral home. I'll point out where it is. Crashed vehicles over here. The suspect was hiding behind a vehicle, started walking down, shooting into the classroom. There was discussion early on that an ISD, consolidated ISD for Uvalde, was a resource officer and had confronted the suspect. That did not happen, as R.D. Escalon talked about yesterday. It was certainly stated in preliminary interviews, but often these preliminary interviews and a cursory walkthrough doesn't reveal the type of information, and certainly, police officers, like anyone else, under stress, sometimes witnesses get it wrong. But the bottom line is that officer was not on scene, not on campus, but had heard the 911 call with a man with a gun, drove immediately to the area, sped to what he thought was the man with a gun, to the back of the school, and what turned out to be a teacher, and not the suspect. In doing so, he drove right by the suspect, who was hunkered down behind a vehicle, where he began shooting at the school. At 11:31, the suspect shooting in between the vehicle is when it began, while patrol vehicle gets to the funeral home. Multiple shots are fired outside the school at 11:31. Patrol car accelerates into the parking lot, drives by the shooter. That's exactly what I was talking about. It was the ISD officer at that time. He passes, then leaves the camera view. There's multiple shots fired at the school at 11:32, at 11:32:27, at 11:32:36. And at 11:33 is when the suspect entered the school at the door that I'm pointing to now. At 11:33, the suspect begins shooting into room 111 or 112. It's not possible to determine from the video angle that we have at this point in time. We do know this, that he shot more than 100 rounds based on the audio evidence at that time, at least 100 rounds. He entered at 11:33, or 11:33, he started shooting in the classrooms, 111 and 112. At 11:35, 3 police officers entered the same door as the suspect entered. All 3 of those police officers worked for the Uvalde Police Department. They were later followed by another 4, a team of Uvalde police officers, 3, and also a county deputy sheriff. So a total of 7 officers were on the scene. The 3 initial police officers that arrived went directly to the door, and 2 received grazing wounds at that time from the suspect, while the door was closed. At 11:37, there was more gunfire. Another 16 rounds was fired at 11:37. 1 at 11:37 and 16 seconds, 11:38, 11:40, 11:44. At 11:51, a police sergeant and USB agents started to arrive. At 12:03, officers continue to arrive in the hallway, and there were as many as 19 officers at that time in that hallway. At 12:15, we know that BORTAC members arrive. Not the entire BORTAC, but members of BORTAC, along with Shields. At 12:21, the suspect fired again, was believed to be at the door. At 11:21, law enforcement moved down the hallway. At 11:50, they breached the door using keys that they're able to get from the janitor because both doors were locked. Though both of the classrooms that he shot into were locked when officers arrived. They killed the suspect at that time. And now I'd like to go over the 911 timeline. Which I'll warn you is not it's better that I read it than you listen to it. The caller identified, I'll not say her name, but she was in room 112, called 911 at 12:03. The duration of the call was 1 minute and 23 seconds. She identified herself and whispered she's in room 112. At 12:10, she called back in room 12, advised there multiple dead. 12:13, again she called on the phone. Again at 12:16, she called back and said there was 8 to 9 students alive. At 12:19, a 911 call was made, and another person in room 111 called. I will not say her name. She hung up when another student told her to hang up. At 12:21, you could hear over the 911 call that 3 shots were fired. At 12:36, 911 call, it lasted for 21 seconds. The initial caller called back, student, child, called back, was told to stay on the line and be very quiet. She told 911 that he shot the door. At approximately 12:43 and 12:47, she asked 911 to please send the police now. At 12:46, she said that she could hear the police next door. At 12:50, shots are fired. They can be heard over the 911 call. And at 12:51 is very loud and sounds like the officers are moving children out of the room. At that time, the first child that called was outside before the call cuts off. Additional information that we have is that there are 58 total magazines at the school related to the crime scene. 11 of those magazines were inside the school. 3 were on the suspect's body. 2 in room 112, 6 inside room 111. 5 were on the ground, 1 was in the rifle. There were 32 magazines outside the school, but on school property. 1 just outside the school building and 31 in the suspect's backpack that he did not take into the classrooms with him. There was 15 magazines at the crash site. There were 2 magazines at the suspect's residence for a total of 60 magazines. He had purchased and had a total of 1,657 total rounds of ammunition. 315 of those rounds were inside the school. 142 of those were spent cartridges. 173 were live rounds. 922 were outside of the school, but on school property. 22 of those were spent cartridges. 900 were live rounds. 422 were at the crash site. 22 were spent cartridges. 420 of those were live rounds. There's 35 spent law enforcement cartridges total in the school. 8 of those were in the hallway. 27 were inside the classroom. 111 where the suspect was killed. I had mentioned that I was going to go over quickly a digital timeline. One of the things we talked about early, and I want to correct something that was said early on in the investigation is that he posted, okay, on Facebook publicly that he was going to kill that he was going to shoot his grandmother, and secondly after that he was going to, that he had shot her, and then third that he was going to go shoot up a school. That did not happen. It was actually on a message. It was a Facebook application, messenger application to somebody else that he had a conversation with. We know that through his digital media footprint, and I'll just do by date time, that Ramos asked his sister to help him buy a gun. She flatly refused. That was in September of 21. I'll avoid some of these and get to he had Instagram, a 4-group chat, and it was discussed that Ramos being a school shooter. That was on February 28th of 2022. On March 1st of 2022, there was an Instagram he had with 4 people. It was a chat. He discussed him buying a gun. On March 3rd, 2022, there was another 4-person chat. Quotations, word on the street is you are buying a gun. Ramos replied, just bought something. RN. On March 14th, and there's an Instagram posting by the subject, in quotations, 10 more days. A user replied, are you going to shoot up school or something? The subject replied, no, and stop asking dumb questions and you'll see.